Jinbei vs. Killer is an interesting debate among the community. Some fans say Jinbei is way too strong, and other fans believe Killer is out of his league. Alright, so I'm going to start off by saying Marineford feats are really inconsistent, and honestly I don't even think they would help because we didn't see Killer in Marineford, so there's no way for us to know how he would do against enemies in Marineford. Whereas we have both Jinbei and Killer in Wano, we can tell how strong they are, so it's a much better way to scale them. Let's talk about the portrayal. Jinbei is the fourth strongest member of the Straw Hats. Some people will say third, but honestly I think he's fourth and it's pretty obvious. He used to be part of the Big Mom Pirates until he decided to join Luffy. Narratively, his strength has almost reached its peak because Jinbei is almost 50 years old, and he hasn't really shown any insane growth from the pre-time skip, and that's mainly because he was already way stronger than Luffy, so he didn't really need to train like the other Straw Hats, and the Straw Hats have kind of been catching up to Jinbei ever since the time skip. But it's safe to say that Monster Trio is well above Jinbei as of right now, especially Luffy. Now onto Killer, who is Kid's right-hand man. He's only 27 years old and has already shown comparable levels of power to Jinbei. In fact, he was one of the only people capable of hurting Kaido, which I will get into later. Now, when we speak of narratives, I think a lot of people imagine this picture, but for some reason, nobody acknowledges Killer's power. In this panel, we see it talking about the new era taking over the old, and we see Luffy, Zoro, Kid, Law, and Killer, meaning Killer will also be one of the strongest pirates in the new era, which makes perfect sense. He's the right-hand man to Kid, and he's one of the strongest supernovas out of all the Worst Generation, which would explain why he was placed on the rooftop. It seems like Oda chose the characters that are going to be the strongest up-and-coming pirates, and if we look at Eustace Kid himself, he is significantly stronger than Jinbei, honestly not even in the same league, so it's completely possible that his right-hand man Killer could also be more powerful than Jinbei, especially considering all this dialogue about the new generation which Killer is a part of. But with portrayal aside, I'm going to get right into the feats. Let's start off with Jinbei because he has a lot more screen time than Killer, so there's a lot more to go over. Alright, so first off we have Jinbei vs. Ace, which lasted about 5 days, and this was a while back before Ace was on Whitebeard's ship, which means Ace was really not as strong as he was during Marineford, but I still think it's safe to say Jinbei should be about equal to Ace. Now skipping over to Marineford, we see Jinbei low diff Moria, which honestly isn't that surprising considering Jinbei is actually a good martial artist and Moria is a bum, but now is when we start getting into the big leagues. Kainu has an attack blocked by Jinbei using some type of water technique. Jinbei tries to protect Luffy from a Kainu and he gets punched right through his body. Luffy receives his infamous X on his chest, but luckily for Jinbei he was strong enough to not die, so I guess that kind of means Jinbei should be stronger than Ace was in Marineford since he managed to not die even though he was pretty much going to die if Law didn't help them, so he's barely above Ace in Marineford, honestly, but that's pre-time skip. Now moving on to Whole Cake, we have Jinbei versus Big Mom, and now this is actually a pretty impressive feat. Jinbei manages to block a direct attack for a couple seconds but ends up getting tossed in the water, but then he follows up with an attack called Vagabond Drill. Pretty impressive because most characters in One Piece would have taken serious damage from an attack like this. However, before people start saying Jinbei is Yonko level, he didn't really do any damage. And it should be noted that out of all the Yonko, Oda makes Big Mom the dumbest and easiest target. After this attack by Jinbei, she literally gets blitzed by Brook. Now to be fair, Brook is really fast, but I genuinely doubt he would speed blitz people like Katakuri or King. Big Mom actually got thrown out of the building by Robin, so that's really embarrassing. So whenever I see Big Mom get hit, I honestly don't take it seriously unless she shows a lot of blood or a lot of fatigue. Alright, so now we get to the Wano arc, and we see Jinbei fighting Who's Who. And now a lot of people will claim that Jinbei low diffed Who's Who, except I don't really agree with that. It was definitely a mid-medium diff in my opinion. It actually falls in line with most of the Wano fights. So it actually goes to show that the Straw Hats are definitely more powerful than most of the Beast Pirates. And now that we got Jinbei's feats out the way, let's talk about Killer because I think a lot of people downplay his feats. Now based on what he did during the rooftop battle, he can actually easily be scaled close to Katakuri and beginning of Wano Luffy, which Jinbei honestly doesn't even scale to. So in chapter 1001, Zoro and Killer attack a base form Kaido and it leaves nothing but a dent in his neck. And in chapter 1002, Kaido explains that the supernova have learned how to counter his durability. Now some people have said that Killer did no damage, but that's literally just not true because Kaido says they have bypassed his durability. Now this is when Killer attacks with Sonic Scythe. Using sound waves, Killer is able to attack internal organs. According to Google, sounds above 185 decibels can impact internal organs and kill people. So a lot of people in One Piece really wouldn't be able to tank an attack like this. Basically, Killer is a hidden sound shinobi and we never knew. So this feat alone is honestly better than anything Jinbei has ever done. Later in the arc, start, Killer gets hit by Big Mom's Indra attack, and the rest of the battle honestly just gets cut off, but the anime fills in some gaps, like Killer trying to attack a hybrid Kaido but his attack having no effect, showing that Kaido's a lot more durable in his hybrid form. In chapter 10-11, we see Killer going off with Kid to defeat Big Mom, and they both get slammed by Fulgoro, which is an attack that would actually scale higher than Zeus and Indra because Big Mom wanted to find a stronger, more reliable thundercloud, and we know that Hera is more powerful than Zeus. Alright, so later in this chapter, we actually see Killer going up against Hawkins, and Hawkins is honestly kind of a bum, but compared to the Toby Roppo, he's actually pretty comparable. He gave Zoro and Law about the same amount of difficulty that Page 1 gave to Raid Suit Sanji, so he's clearly not commander level, but he's definitely on par with the Toby Roppo. Now, Hawkins' Devil Fruit is also kind of broken, and he actually uses Kid's life in order to make it impossible for Killer to win the fight without killing Kid. As you can see, this dude Hawkins is literally bashing in his own skull, so if I'm being completely honest, this was never an equal matchup. Hawkins starts stomping out Killer, but this is because Killer told his entire crew to not fight, and he was willing to sacrifice his own life, right? So Hawkins is a real life bum, and there's nothing else to it. So after a while, Killer finally realizes that Kid has no left arm, and then he cuts off Hawkins' arm. Honestly, this is not even a real fight, and there was no reality which Hawkins actually stood a chance. Alright, so now it's time to compare Jinbei to Killer. Killer's attack power is definitely better than Jinbei. He landed a direct shot on Big Mom during Whole Cake while she was not defending herself, and he actually did no damage. But comparing that to Killer, he was able to bypass Kaido's durability and cut through the insides using Sonic Scythe. Kaido's durability in Dragon form is better than his base form, and even in base form, he's drastically more durable than basically everybody besides King. Just to give small examples, Big Mom, the so-called Iron Balloon, was able to scratch her own knee, whereas Kaido jumped off 10,000 meters in the sky and has been unable to kill himself for a long time. So there's really no contest in terms of overall durability. Kaido was basically unmatched. So even while Killer's attack was not that effective, it still scales higher than any attack Jinbei has ever used, because even a beginning of Wano Luffy was unable to hurt Kaido, which means Killer's current attack power would scale even higher than Katakuri's during Whole Cake. So I think it's fair to say Killer's attack power is significantly better than Jinbei's. And if you look at terms of overall defense, I think Jinbei has much better use of Haki, but Killer has shown similar feats of endurance to Jinbei. For starters, he has been hit by Hybrid Kaido without passing out, which means his endurance would be significantly above Luffy during the beginning of Wano. And if I'm being completely honest, one swing from a hybrid Kaido should be stronger than Who's entire arsenal, but if that wasn't enough, he also blocked wind attacks from Kaido and taken laning attacks from Big Mom head on, which again should be stronger than Who's entire arsenal. And even after the Supernova got whooped, Killer had enough strength to beat Hawkins with zero difficulty. Jinbei was able to withstand an onslaught of advanced Rokushiki techniques by Who's Who, and he even said that if Jinbei didn't dodge, he would have been ripped apart at certain points. So Who's is definitely not a weak character, but the problem is he scales below Jack the Drought and significantly lower than King and Queen. I don't see Killer being any lower than King and Queen, and even that is kind of disrespectful. He has been portrayed as a first commander level character and has the feats to back them up, and Killer obviously didn't fight Kaido and Big Mom in a 1v1 fight. But even if Killer didn't achieve as much as Luffy or Zoro, he still showed very impressive feats by being on the rooftop alone. To end this debate, I believe Jinbei does not have what it takes to defeat Killer. It would definitely be a tough battle, but in the end, I think Killer's attack power would be too much for Jinbei to handle, and I think Killer's rooftop feats are enough to say he can outlast Jinbei in a 1v1 scenario. But that's all I got for today's video. If you disagree, drop a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.